Smiling faces.
I haven't even looked at them for
Good morning, and welcome to Mojave County Board of Supervisors meeting. I'll call the meeting to order. Start with the invocation from Supervisor Bishop and Pledge of Allegiance. Boss Wakamoto, Supervisor Wakamoto, please rise.
Heavenly Father, we come to you today to give you honor and praise. We thank you for our great country, and we ask your divine wisdom for all of our leaders here today. May we be given the wisdom and courage in the decisions that we make. We ask that you guide and direct our meetings so that it's full of wisdom, productivity, and respect for one another. We thank you for the accomplishments of reaching our goals, and we pray these things in your mighty name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Board of Supervisors may, by motion, recess into executive session to receive legal advice from the board's attorney on any item contained in the agenda pursuant to the Arizona Revised Statutes. Okay, at this point, I'll call for a motion, action to call for an executive session to be held February 5th, 2018 at 9 a.m. for the discussion and consultation with legal counsel in accordance with the Arizona Revised Statutes to discuss items noticed on the agenda with an asterisk.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried unanimously. On to official business, discussion of pending legal or contemplated litigation claims and emails. Mr. Esplin?
Nothing to report to the board.
Great. Committee or legislative reports. I'll start to my left. Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had a MPO meeting, but it was just regular business, so nothing to report there. Also been working with the Arizona Department of Agriculture to set up a food access workshop, which will be held February 6th, 8:30 here in the boardroom meeting. That's all reports.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson. Supervisor Bishop.
Thank you, Chairman Watson. I attended the 53rd Arizona State Legislation opening day with Governor Ducey delivering his fourth State of the State address before the joint session of the House and the Senate. And at that, the governor laid out his priorities, which I'm sure you've all seen in the newspapers, so I won't go any further into that.
Thank you. And I attended that function as well. Supervisor Wakamoto.
I attended the NRCD meeting in terms of what's happening in the county and looking for new wet water for the Kingman region in terms of alternative ways to regenerate the aquifer.
Thank you. And I attended that meeting as well. Supervisor Angus.
Nothing this morning.
Pardon me?
I have nothing this morning.
Thank you. Okay. County Manager's report.
No report today, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Wow. Batting 1,000. Approval of the December 18th, 2017 Board of Supervisors regular minutes.
Make a motion to approve?
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Okay, we'll go on to the call of the public. Those wishing to address the board at the call of the public regarding matters not on the board agenda must fill out a form and submit to the clerk a call to the public request to speak form. Those are located in the back of the room. Must be done so prior to the meeting. Action taken as a result of public comments will be limited to corresponding to criticism, referral to staff, or placing a matter on a future agenda. Comments are restricted to items not on the regular agenda, with the exception of the consent agenda, and must be relate to matters within the jurisdiction of this board. Several people signed up this morning. Ramon Stantz. Good morning.
Good morning, Board of Supervisors, County Manager. My name is Armin Stange, 4321 South Cavalry Road in Fort Mojave. We experience problems with transients, panhandling, and now prostitution. I was yesterday at the Safeway parking lot, and people are standing on every corner there and stopping traffic, asking for money, and yesterday afternoon, a prostitute was soliciting in the parking lot. Is there anything the county can do about it? And I really would appreciate your help on this one.
Certainly will. We'll refer that directly to the sheriff, who's right behind us, and we'll talk to him right after the meeting.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And thank you, sir. Wayne Holland?
Good morning. Wayne Holland, 4825 North Mormon Flat Road, Golden Valley. Just like to give you a quick update on what the Golden Valley Cactus Cleaners accomplished last year. We cleaned up 104,000 pounds of trash. We hauled 15 boats and over 4,800 tires out of Golden Valley. That brings our total since we started in April of 15 to 215,795 pounds of trash, 25 boats, and over 8,300 tires. That's just out of Golden Valley. We also have now started, we have a Kingman Cactus Cleaner group, and we also are starting a Dolan Springs Cactus Cleaner group, which will do their first cleanup in February. I'd like to thank all the board here that supported us, also Erase and the Sheriff's Department for making what we do possible. Continued going on this year, so we're hoping to have your continued support, and I'd also like to recognize Mark Schmidtke. He single-handedly cleaned up the south side of Estrella from Highway 68 to Shinneramp by himself, and now he's working on Egar, and he also does Shinneramp, and they also obviously help us on the cleanups out there in Golden Valley as a cactus cleaner. So I'd like to thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Roy Ann Ortiz.
Roy Ann Ortiz, 1550 Monte Vista, Bullhead City, Arizona. I wanted to talk about observations that I made whenever I'm going through the consent agenda with respect to procurements that come before you for approval. I just think there should be more information, and so I've asked my supervisor to bring up a few issues that I noticed. The second thing is I'd like to recognize Lois Wakamoto for all the hard work she's doing on behalf of our area down there with regard to the water. She's had tons of meetings, and I think she's doing an excellent job on that issue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our call to the public. We'll go on to presentations. Presentation of an appreciation letter from P.J. Allred, Graham County Sheriff, to Doug Schuster, Mojave County. Gentlemen, please come down. Sheriff Allred, welcome to Mojave County.
Thank you. Appreciate you allowing me to be here and address you just for a few brief moments. As you know, there's in the state of Arizona, there's only 15 counties, and we've got a pretty big state, pretty big area to cover, and when you look at our whole entire state that way, which means there's only 15 sheriffs in the state of Arizona. recently, in our county, in Graham County, which I hope most of you know where Graham County's at. So, some may not, but it's about close to 7-hour drive to the southeast here in the southeast corner of the state. And we recently opened up a new jail, a detention facility for the adults. And I think most of you already know what it takes to open up a facility like that. And I appreciate your sheriff knowing what that takes also. And he allowed some resources to come and help us and assist us in opening up our facility, which made for a very smooth transition. And just to let you know, he was the first guy that, even without putting out a big call, he was the first one to respond and come to my aid to help me. And we're on opposite sides of the states, but that just kind of shows that, the sheriffs work very well together no matter where we're at in the state of Arizona. And we work a lot of hours together in other areas as well. But that's just to protect our citizens. After all, as you're elected as well, we're also elected to represent our folks in our communities. And we want to do that at 100% to the best of their interests and whatever it takes to make it happen for them. But anyway, if I may just read a very short letter. It says, Dear Sheriff Schuster, I would like to extend my appreciation to you for sending your detention officers and resources to help us move our inmates to our new facility on December 21st, 2017. Your department's dedication and commitment to providing assistance when needed is outstanding. The professionalism displayed by your staff was second to none, and it made our job much easier. You are indeed a professional organization, and to be proud of your staff, thank you again for your valuable and much appreciated assistance. Please give special thanks to those officers directly involved. Respectfully, Sheriff Preston J. Allred.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, just would like to state, of course I facilitated, but the majority of the work was done by our staff. I would like to point out that Captain Bischoff was instrumental in the organization of this effort. Lieutenant Stephen Cox was fantastic when it came to the collaboration, and the troops on the ground doing the job. Detention Officer Joshua Rahm, Detention Officer Stacy Summers, and Detention Officer Benjamin Castro were down there helping out. They deserve the recognition, and thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a presentation this morning from the Treasurer's Office, Treasurer Cindy Landa Cox, concerning the tax deed sale.
Good morning, Chairman Watson, supervisors, and staff. Today we wanted to give you an overview, something that I've been promising Supervisor Angus since 2014. Then we implemented our new system, and 3 years later we're finally ready to give you the presentation. So I'm excited to introduce Luke Mornian, who's my management analyst senior, and Julia Dollarhide, my management analyst. They're in the special projects area of my office, and they've been working on this really hard, a lot of work done. I'm really excited to bring it to your attention, and this is the first of 2 parts. The second part will be in February. And as I've said millions of times at different places, the staff is what makes the office run. The staff is what makes everything happen, as you well know. So I'm going to give it to them and let them make it happen. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy.
Good morning. As Cindy said, this morning we're going to talk about the tax deed sale. During our presentation today, you're going to see a lot of interrelated data sources that we've pulled together. There are multiple factors that have impacted this entire process and data collection effort. So we would ask that you please hold your questions until the end. We will have a Q&A session. So today we're going to cover 3 main topics: tax deed sale. What is it? Why do we need it? And how does it work? There is some confusion on the topic of the tax deed sale. So first and foremost, we want to make sure everyone understands that the tax deed sale is not the same as the annual tax lien sale. The lien sale is a sale of a lien on a parcel for unpaid taxes. The unpaid tax due is offered for sale annually. A tax lien gets placed against the parcel, but there is no immediate change of ownership. The tax deed sale is a sale of the parcel itself. Severely delinquent parcels would be deeded to the state. The parcel is auctioned and sold to a new owner by the Board of Supervisors during the sale, and there would be an immediate change of ownership. So what exactly is the tax deed sale? Well, when we look at the statutes, it is the auction and sale of the real property in the county held by the state by tax deed to the highest bidder for cash. So what does it mean when we say a parcel held by the state by tax deed? Well, the County Board of Supervisors requests the tax deed process. So at any time beginning 5 years after the lien is assigned to the state, the board may request treasurer's deed to the property, and the deed moves the ownership of the parcel to the name of the state of Arizona. So what is a tax lien assigned to the state? Parcels are offered at tax lien sale each year. When a parcel receives no bid, the Treasurer's Office follows by the statutes, where it requires that we assign to the state the property tax liens remaining unsold. So the lien is more or less a placeholder. The county receives no money on these items. We like to refer to them as county-held liens because we place them on behalf of the state on the parcel. But it's just a place marker. We've gotten no funds. The tax deed sale provides a statutory method for resolving severely delinquent parcels with liens assigned to the state that remain paid after 5 years. The deed sale is needed now more than ever. We have a volume of unsold liens that's increasing at an alarming rate and contributing to unsustainable delinquency rates.
As Julia mentioned, the number of unsold tax liens is increasing. So in one word, why do we need the tax deed sale? It's revenue. The graph up on the screen represents the number of unsold tax liens assigned to the state, and these are still on our books today. There's 40 years worth of data represented in this graph, going back to 1975, although we do have some delinquencies that extend further back to 1969. In the 30-year span from 1975 to 2005, we had an average of 2,300 unsold tax liens per tax roll year. Now remember, no money has been collected on any unsold tax liens. In 2007, you'll see a noticeable spike in the number of unsold tax liens. So what caused the increase in these unsold liens beginning around 2007? One factor, the then Board of Supervisors passed a resolution increasing the deed sale minimum bid. Now, the statutory minimum is the cost of the deed process, and we'll get into that a little bit more in some of the later slides. The current minimum that was set by the board in late calendar year 2007 was 50% of the back taxes and fees, inclusive of all the deeding costs. And we believe that setting the minimum bid above the statutory minimum made parcels offered at the deed sale quite a bit less appealing to potential investors. We also had the real estate bubble that popped. There was a dramatic decline in the value of properties. That kind of caused a rippling effect. The economy crashed, unemployment rates spiked, people lost their jobs, they lost their retirement funds. They were unable to pay their mortgages or their taxes. We had many property owners file bankruptcies when their properties became underwater with negative equity. And mortgage companies even stopped paying delinquent taxes because they were upside down on the properties that they owned. So we've had no ongoing annual tax deed sale. Again, In late 2008, the Board of Supervisors at the time voted to suspend future tax deed sales, and this basically removed the threat of losing property for property owners. And we believe that the removal of the threat of statutory action was a large contributing factor to the increase in delinquencies. In this next graph, you see a close look at the spike in the eligible parcels for tax deed going from 2009 to 2015 tax rolls. The 2009 tax roll should have been tax deeded and sold beginning in 2016. On this graph, calendar year 18 represents parcels from the 2011 tax roll. They're 7 years delinquent before they can be taken to tax deed sale. Calendar year 2020 represents parcels from 2013 and so on. So if no action is taken, if we continue down the path that we're on, we estimate the number of eligible parcels will more than double from 10,300 in calendar year 2016 to close to 23,000 by calendar year 2022. Now this green overlay on the graph, combined with the two, you see the estimated total delinquency volume. And as we get towards calendar year 2022, it will be greater than 10% of the total parcels on the tax roll. Compare that to many counties in Arizona that are less than 1% delinquent, and you see the magnitude of the problem. The impact of inaction is a projected delinquency volume which is unsustainable, and it negatively impacts cash flow and future budget cycles. The spike in unsold tax liens, which started with 2007 tax roll, is unusual. It's something that the county had not experienced in more than 4 decades. We have seen the trend continue for 9 consecutive tax rolls, and all indicators show it's not going to change anytime in the near future. We also need a tax deed sale to correct the situation and lower the delinquency rate to the historical normal levels again. The tax lien sale, which Julia described, is not enough to resolve this issue. It's not a cure-all to replace the missing revenue when taxes remain unpaid on parcels. This next slide is the results of our tax lien sale over the past few years. The orange graphs represent the number of parcels that were offered. And you'll see in 2015, there's a big decrease there. That's an anomaly. That was due to data conversion issues when we switched systems. We had to remove 21,000 parcels from the sale because they needed further data validation. But the remaining parcels equal the number eligible to be sold for the first time at lien sale. If we'd offered everything in 2015, it would have been approximately 28,000 parcels. The green graphs represent the actual number of parcels sold. And if you look at the two, you'll see we've had a slight increase in the number of parcels offered, but we've had a 30% decrease in the number of parcels sold between 2013 and 2017. And over the last 3 years, the number of parcels sold has been relatively flat. This is some data on our lien sale investors. We took the top 20 by the amount of money that they spent at the lien sale over the past 5 years. And the average investment by top investors has declined from $2.4 million on average in 2013 to $1.6 million in 2017. We've also seen a number of large institutional investors choose not to participate in our lien sale. Comparing the 5-year average to the 2-year average, we actually had 9 of the top 20 investors over this period who did not participate at all in the last 2 years. Average investor annual spend has decreased 60% from 1.1 million to just under $500,000, and the average interest rate for the winning bids has increased from 8.7 to 11.1%. These large institutional investors are not willing to bid on low interest rates anymore. They have higher yield investments available elsewhere for the same level of risk, and stock market, other investments are providing higher returns faster versus the time and cost to actually foreclose on a tax lien. Again, the tax lien sale results, these are the overall sale proceeds. So this depicts the revenue that we derive from the annual tax lien sale. As I mentioned, the revenues are flat over the last 3 years. We've seen a 60% decrease in annual lien sale revenue. It was $7.1 million in 2013, down to $2.8 million last year. As I mentioned before, there's availability of higher yielding alternatives for investors. And in speaking with some of the other counties in Arizona, Pinal and Yavapai County have also seen similar decreases percentage-wise in their revenues from their lien sales. Here we have the value of the unpurchased liens, and while we see the sale proceeds over the last 3 years flattening out, the dollar amount that's attributed to the unsold liens at the close of each lien sale has increased by 31%. We had $30 million in value assigned county-held liens in 2013. It's increased to just over $39 million last year in 2017. So what's the cost of delinquency versus the actual cost to deed a parcel to the state? The total delinquent amount due of unsold parcels for 2009 through 2015 is depicted in green here. This graph shows all unpaid delinquent amounts. This includes base tax charges, interest, fees, penalties. There's also approximately $600,000 of tax charges from 2017 that are not included in the 2011 roll that's shown above. And this loss of revenue will continue to increase the longer we wait to start this process. The second portion of this graph is the one-time estimated cost per parcel to deed to the state. We estimate $350 per parcel. That includes all statutorily required mailings, title search, advertisement, deed and notary, as well as posting fees. And so the overall cost to deed all eligible parcels will more than double from $3.6 million in 2016 to $8 million in calendar year 2022. So just to quickly recap, last tax deed sale occurred 10 years ago in March of '08. We had an increase in the minimum deed sale bid amount. We had a suspension of the tax deed process and the deed sale. The money to cover the cost of deeding these parcels to the state was removed from the budget. And tax lien sale results are not sufficient to offset the declining property tax revenue that we're seeing with these escalating delinquency rates. A successful tax deed sale will produce immediate cash inflow for Mojave County. It will lead to savings with annual delinquency expenses, and it will be an increase in tax revenues collected as we move forward into future years. The county needs stable revenue. Property tax accounts for over 40% of total revenue that the county collects. That's the largest single source of revenue for Mojave County. And now Julia is going to go over the final portion of this presentation, which is basically an overview of the steps in the tax deed process. And everything in this is geared toward having a prospective deed sale about 12 months from today.
So we're going to look at the 2011 tax roll because those are the parcels that are eligible that have the county held, what we call county held liens, liens assigned to the state for which we've received no money, still existing on our books today. They would have started with a tax statement that we sent out in September. When they did not pay after first and second half were due, they received a delinquency notice from the treasurer's office in June. Then they received a tax lien sale notice in December of 2012, warning them, please pay or your parcel will go to the tax lien sale to be sold. When they did not sell at the lien sale, which was held in February of 2013, so already we're more than a year after they initially received their bills, Then we placed the county-held lien assigned to the state in February of 13. Now, the statute requires that we have to wait 5 years from this date. So each February is our place marker for when we would have the next section of parcels available to take through this process. So this year, next month, in February of 18, is when we could start the tax deed process on the 2011 roll. We would take 6 to 8 months in the process. As Luke was explaining, there's several steps that the treasurer's office would need to take in order to perfect this and get a deed over in the name of the state. Once that's done, the board could sell it, and we would have parcels back on the active tax roll in new ownership hands by September. So we are talking about taking parcels through the sale and trying to turn them as quickly as possible and get them back on the active tax rolls. So for the treasurer's office, the tax deed process means that we would supply the list of eligible parcels to the board. The board would apply for the treasurer's deeds for the parcels which they choose, and then the treasurer's office would perform the statutory steps outlined for you on the screen. We do have a company through procurement that does all of the title searches for the county that we would use. We would also be sending personal notices out to each of the parcel owners and those of legal interest. That goes via certified mail. We would also need to publish in the newspaper, and where it is needed, if we get those letters back through registered certified mail, we would need to post notice on the property. That's not applicable to everyone. At this point, the parcel owner still has a chance to redeem. They can keep their property. The letter that they will receive in the newspaper notice is going to give them 90 days to cure, and that's a provision in the statutes. If they do pay and pay everything in full, including any cost that we have absorbed to this point, by bringing it through this process, they pay that in full and everything stops and they retain ownership of their property. If not, when the 90-day period is up, the treasurer will execute and deliver to the board the treasurer's deed. We will title the parcel in the name of the state. The parcel is now exempt from any tax levy until it's sold. So the county no longer incurs cost on the delinquent parcel, which is what we have today. We have cost every single year on these parcels. By statute, costs for this process are absorbed by the county general fund, and now we have the deed sale steps. So each November, the board will compile the list of properties held by the state under tax deed and make them known. Then the board can publish a newspaper notice of the sale for the property 2 weeks prior to the sale, very similar to how the tax lien sale happens. And then online auction of the property can commence. As Luke mentioned earlier, we get immediate cash payment for the purchase. That is a requirement under the statute, which means immediate revenue to Mojave County. The parcel is deeded to the successful purchaser at their cost, and the parcel is back on the active tax roll, so it's no longer exempt, and we can start collecting taxes once again. This was part 1 of 2, as Cindy mentioned earlier, of our presentation. We are going to, in our next presentation, provide you very intimate details of the 2011 parcel list, including how we're going to filter down the list, some target dates and timelines if we were to commence the tax deed process. And we're also going to provide you with an analysis showing lien amounts owing, tax charge, the assessor's full cash value for these properties, their geographic locations, and provide some suggested changes to the original Board of Supervisor resolution for minimum bid and allow for online auction because that's not in there currently. And at this time, we will field any questions you may have.
Thank you. That was very interesting. My questions, I guess, need to be addressed to the board members or Mike Hendricks that were here in 2008. Why did the Board of Supervisors increase the minimum bid and then go on to suspend the sale in 2000? What happened in 2008 that made that happen?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Angus, I wasn't in a position of authority back then, and I really don't know, but I believe the board would logically want to get a minimum price for a parcel as close to market value as possible. And what is being proposed here is a different approach that the staff is and the treasurer is proposing, that we eliminate the resolution requiring that minimum bid in favor of establishing market by widening the amount of people that would be proposing on the parcels, which would actually establish the maximum value for that parcel by doing an internet sale, by opening it up to overseas bidders, by contacting all potential proposers and all companies who proposed in the past, and providing as large a possible base of potential purchasers as we can possibly provide. So I believe the threat of a minimum bid chased away some of the initial investors. I believe that because the sale was unsuccessful back in 2008, the board decided not to spend money. Money was tight at that time. We probably diverted it to other things. Now, with that said, I'd like to mention one thing that was proposed that might not have been evident, that it would be not practical for the treasurer to try to sell all delinquent parcels, because each parcel costs $300 to provide the information necessary and to comply with statutes to be able to sell that parcel. So 3,000 times 20-some-odd thousand parcels is just cost prohibitive. 300 times 20-some-odd thousand parcels is just cost prohibitive. So what's being proposed or will be proposed in the next phase is that they look at the first eligible year, which is 5 years previous to 2018, which is the first eligible year would be the 2011, is that correct?
7 years previous.
2011 tax roll that was sold in February 2013.
Look at providing the board with the exact cost figure for bringing those parcels forward, and allowing us to budget for that this upcoming year, and then utilizing the monies that are received from the sale to expand your tax deed sale program in the future, if that's my understanding, if that's correct. That's correct, Supervisor, or County Manager Hendricks.
And it's also about 14,000 parcels we're going to talk about at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Johnson, question?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
None now.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
No.
Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Treasurer's Department, and certainly you two folks that have done all the hard lifting on this project. And I anticipate that we're going to see some great results. So I'd like to say personally, thank you very much. We'll be looking forward to your next next proposal, and see if we can get some of these turned around. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Treasurer Cox, thank you very much. Job well done. Moving on to the consent agenda. The following items listed under the consent agenda will be considered as a group and acted upon by one motion with no separate discussion of said items, unless a board member so requests. In that event, the item will be removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and action. I'll start to my left for removal. Supervisor Johnson.
2125.
2125. Supervisor Bishop.
None.
Supervisor Angus.
11, 12, and 16.
11, 12, and 16. Is that correct?
Yes.
16.
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto.
None.
And one of my interests is also covered. Okay. Chair will entertain a motion for the consent agenda minus items 11, 12, 16, 21, and 25.
So made.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, motion carried. Item 11. I believe that was,
Me. Now, I saw this, and it's to accept in-kind donations totaling almost $8,000 from a Dr. Prabha Weiss and Weiss Pediatrics, and I just thought it would be nice to publicly thank them. If you want to just kind of explain quickly, I just wanted to publicly thank them, is what it's about.
Good morning, and thank you, Supervisor Angus, Chairman Watson, and members of the board. Yes, Dr. Weiss's office was closing, and she had a lot of vaccines that were eligible for our immunization program, so she called our office and asked if we would be willing to accept those and use them for our clients. So yes, we are indeed grateful, and thank you very much.
Thank you. That's all.
thank you.
Oh, motion to approve item 11.
All right.
Second.
We have a motion and a second for the approval of item 11. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item 12.
Chairman Watson, I was asked to pull this. I think it is a further follow-up to what one of my constituents, Ms. Ortiz, wanted to find out more about the process. So she'd like to come up and talk about it.
Thank you, Hildy. Should I state my name and address again? There was one question I had on this. I read through about 90-plus pages, and I noticed that they said they received 2 bids. However, there was no information on the second bid, and I was just wondering why it was a secret. I'd just like to see how competitive it was, the bid you accepted to the one that was not accepted.
Would you like to have the procurement department look at that? Morning, sir.
Good morning, Chairman Watson, Supervisors. This was competitively bid, as we normally do. Once the bids were received, they were sent to Public Works, and the evaluation committee at Public Works recommended the award to Schofield Civil Engineer Construction LLC. So it followed the normal process. I believe the amount for the second bidder was published on our website. If the Public Works Director would like to add anything else.
Can I ask something? So what you're saying is that the details are usually published on the website. So if a constituent wants to follow up and get more information, that they can go to the website.
Chairman Watson, Supervisor Angus, that is correct.
Okay. That's all.
Answer your question?
That answers the question. I believe that answers the question. So with that, I'll make a motion to approve item 12.
Second.
We have a motion, and Supervisor Walker, did you second it? Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carried. Item number 16. I believe this was,
It's still me?
You?
I think do you want to talk to this, or did the last answer cover this one as well?
I don't think it does, because it's exercising of an option, and I was really inquiring as to what kind of awards were made. I mean, do I have to go back and look at that, or Can't the employees say, we awarded 4 contracts in the base year, we awarded this amount to this company, this company, this company, and this company, because they told me they were doing multiple awards and that they would, when I spoke with them, that they would fairly distribute the work as it came along to each one of those companies. And I don't know if that's happening or not, because I don't get the information, and I don't know if they publish that on the website. If they do, I'd appreciate knowing.
Would you like to have Mr. Letowski answer a portion of that question?
Good morning, Supervisors. I do wish to express that this particular solicitation does deviate from the standard in which this is representing our capital pavement preservation program treatments. We procured this under a request for proposals. Very, very innovative approach versus the traditional hard invitation for bids, where we often find ourselves writing specifications that exempt or exclude innovative pavement maintenance treatments that have been proven by other jurisdictions to be successful. Instead, we undertook this RFP process, and it was executed in December of 2016, with awards in January of 2017. And this is the renewal of those companies that have offered pavement maintenance treatments. Now, to speak to the citizens' inquiry, the 3 vendors did receive work last year. However, they proposed on different types of pavement surface treatments, and as a result, American Pavement Preservation did receive a contract work for micro sealing and micro surfacing of London Bridge Road, approximately 6 miles, and that was completed last summer. Cactus Asphalt was our contractor on the Legend Ranch Road soil stabilization project, and Sunland Asphalt on the Rosie Canyon Road soil stabilization project. However, staff does recommend that the board consider and approve renewing these contracts amounts, because as part of the RFP process, it was a quality-based selection. We selected pavement maintenance treatments, quite honestly, that are proven to succeed in practice and succeed for their applications in Mojave County. Now, where the pavement preservation program will take us this year is the application of some alternate surface treatments that are included within this RFP. But it's very important for the board to understand that these pavement surface treatments, when a price was presented as part of the RFP, they are indexed to a bituminous price index that is published by the Arizona Department of Transportation. So as a result, the prices that were secured in January 2017 and will be renewed as part of this consideration are indexed to the bituminous price index by ADOT. So we are aiming to likely consider awards to Sunland and Cactus going forward. I should represent, though, American Pavement Preservation only proposed on one particular pavement surface treatment. We, as staff, have not recommended that particular treatment, the microsurfacing, for any of our capital pavement preservation roads this fiscal year 18. But it's still good to have them on contract, of course.
Thank you, Mr. Letowski.
Sounds good to me. I'll make a
Answers your
motion to
question?
approve item 16.
We have a motion for approval. I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carried unanimously. On to item number 21. Supervisor Johnson, I believe that's the one you pulled.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Once again, I reiterate my objection to having specialty courts, but I want to make sure that this employee being hired is being hired on a temporary basis, and they understand that if this grant goes away, we will not be continuing their employment.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How you doing, Officer? Chairman Watson, members of the board. Supervisor Johnson, what we plan to do with this position, because this is a short-term grant initially, which began funding November 1st through, December 1st through November 30th of this year. So we're already a couple months into this process. Obviously, we don't have that person in place yet. I'm going to utilize an officer that's already hired and through training, so they can hit the ground running, provide the services. With respect to what will happen come November 30th, if there's no funding, then we'll either have to lay a person off, or what is most likely to happen, not fill. The position will go away, and that'll be one vacancy we won't be able to fill. Currently, I have multiple vacancies for officers in the adult division, and at any given time, I have not been fully staffed in a number of years, so I don't foresee this being an issue. If by chance we were reaching that point where this would be our last position to hire, then that person would certainly be made aware that if the grant goes away, their position would go away.
Thank you. I guess I bring up another question. Should we be putting a person into this position when we don't have enough people to do what the county job is?
Well, we've been operating short-staffed for a number of years. We try and allocate our resources appropriately, not leaving one office over another undermanned, if you will, which means oftentimes we have resources from other cities traveling to help a location that does have a higher vacancy. Right now, this position I'm looking at would be coming out of the Kingman office, which is where I have the most positions based on a lot of factors, but I don't see it presenting any type of hardship beyond the norm, if you will, that we experience on a daily basis.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have, Mr. Chairman.
If I may add, Supervisor Johnson, Chairman Watson, this is a grant and something new direction that our limited jurisdiction court has never gone before. With the increased heroin uses and opiate issues that we're having in Mojave County, we have for some time tried to, Judge Taylor and myself, have tried to move in a direction to try to curtail the issues at the most earliest opportunity, and we believe it's at the lowest level that we may have more success than waiting for, say, a drug court in the Superior Court. With the City of Kingman, specifically Chief DeVries, the Mojave County Attorney's Office, Magnet Narcotic Task Force, the Probation, and the Justice Court, we're trying to develop this, develop this quasi-drug court or specialty court. I will tell you this, we got this grant because the people who issue those grants seeked us out because of the grants we've applied for in the past. So that would lead one to believe that the opportunity for renewal of this grant is fairly high, since they seeked us out to try to start this court because they believed that we were doing something in the right direction with that. I would also say with the purpose of probation and whether or not another position would be let go of, or this position could be beneficial for such a short time. I anticipated in the future asking for the board's approval, hopefully, to have a full-time probation officer assigned to our court on our own behalf. We typically place 25 people on some form of probation that we don't have a probation officer that are just drug offenses, and to try to prevent them from offending and coming back into the system, Judge Taylor and I strongly believe that a probation officer would be extremely beneficial and hopefully offset any future costs, whether it be jail fees or any other type of fees that may happen if people reoffended. So the answer to your question, short term, yes. But we were seeked out and asked to put in for this grant so we could get the money. And I strongly believe that's for a purpose, believing that this could be an ongoing event. We were included in a grant a couple of years ago with a quasi-drug court, and again, they seeked us out. It was a short-term investment, but it was invested for the purpose of hopefully starting what we're getting ready to do now. And we hope to, we do think it'll cause a little drain on our court system. We're one of the busiest courts in the state, but with that being stated, Judge Taylor and I believe that we have to move forward to try to eliminate reoffending and try to do something other than giving the last part of you going to prison to successfully complete drug court, to where hopefully we get the early offenders or the first offenders not reoffend.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Judge.
I'd like to say something. We had two supervisors who were at the governor's State of the State, and we all know that he is ready to allocate a lot of resources to the, I'm not going to say opioid crisis, the opioid problem and the drug problem in general. And I think there's going to be a lot of money coming down our way throughout the state to do just what you said, which I agree with, try to get it early so it doesn't become a rotating door and a hardship on the courts. So thank you very much.
Mr. Palumbo, Mr. Shulman, Judge Huerta, thank you for another example of Mojave County's leadership in the state. It's a fine example of what you're attempting to do. So with that, thank you.
With that stated, we've been told this will probably be the first one of its kind in the state of Arizona at this level.
To be congratulated. Thank you. Okay.
Chairman Watson, I'll make a motion to approve.
Have a motion? And second for approval. Any further discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 25, authorization for the salary placement candidate for the budget analyst position in the Developmental Services Department at Step 8, Range 15 at $27.41, which is $57,012.80 annually. Supervisor Johnson, I believe you pulled this item?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My concern about this is that this is what, the second or third person we put into a department to do a budget analysis? When we have somebody in finance that does that, and I believe we didn't address, and I think part of your direction, Mr. Chairman, to finance was to look at the appropriate salaries of the individuals doing the budget analysis in the finance department, which haven't been done yet. I think that we have finance, and I think that's their job to do these analysis, and I think they do most of the work anyway, because these other, from what I'm reading in backup, I can see the handprint of especially Sonia Jaramillo on most of these that come forward to us, even though they're coming from other people who might be claiming credit. But I would say this needs to be continued until, at least in my opinion, until we look at it a little more and find out exactly what's going on with finance, and if we're creating a monster here by having every department now want a budget analyst to look at their departments. That was the only reason I pulled it.
Thank you, Supervisor Johnson.
I agree with Supervisor Johnson. I'd like to continue this for more information.
Mr. Hendricks, I believe has a comment.
And just, Mr. Chairman and supervisors, just add to the discussion so that you're aware of the due diligence that had occurred. As you all know, I had Public Works and Development Services previous, and they are the largest departments in our organization in complexity, and I'm not saying that they're the best necessarily, but all the departments are very, very good, but they are very complex. They have a lot of different funding sources. They work with grants. They work with like Development Services has flood control. They have an enterprise account, the building department. They have planning and zoning that has their own fee structures. One of the things that we looked at is trying to rename this position to where it didn't appear so compartmentalized as a budget analysis, because quite frankly, this position is going to be doing a lot of things for the department and putting a lot of things together for Development Services. And I was somewhat concerned about the fee or the salary that was being proposed, so I asked Coral Lloyd, our finance director, and Ken Cunningham, our HR director, and Tim to meet me in my office to go over what is being proposed and the individual and the talents that individual has and what's needed in that department, and to look into the future on what role she's going to be playing. And they all assured me that this individual and the talents that this individual possesses is the salary that's being offered is very fair, very worthwhile, and they said that that was commensurate with her experience and education and abilities. So I felt comfortable after my discussion with them that what was being proposed to the board was a fair proposal and was needed in development services. Tim and I have had a lot of discussions regarding what he needs to adequately function in his department. And I was convinced that this was a necessity and it was something that I wanted to bring forward to the board. So with that said, I agree with Supervisor Johnson and his comments 100% that across the board in this organization, there's areas that need to be looked at. And we've got some incredibly talented people in finance that are undercompensated and actually do most of the heavy lifting for all the Mojave County departments. And one of them's Sonia Jaramillo, and I hope to be able to take this as an opportunity and address that sometime in the future with the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hendrick. Supervisor
Another thing that I hear from this is, we're going into public discussions about raising those fees, which we rescinded and now putting back out for public discussion. And by statute, those fees can only cover the cost of doing business. So it looks, in a way, like you're adding amounts now so that to justify the fee increases later.
Mr. Chairman, can I address that, please?
Certainly.
Okay, now this, since this proposal isn't being done through the budget process, one of the criteria that has to be kept is that this proposal is done without increasing the budget, that it's done within the existing budget, and that it's sustainable. So finance and myself and our development services director took a look at that, and they assured me that that was the case, that this wasn't increasing their bottom line and the budgets for any of their general fund or other departments.
Answer your question. Supervisor Bishop, any comment?
My only comment is if this is being done within the budget, we've done this for so many other departments, and it's within their purview to do this based on what we've told them. I see no difference in this as to some of the other ones that we've done recently. So I would support it, especially knowing that it's not an underhanded way to justify the increase in fees like Supervisor Angus alluded to. So I'm good with it.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, if I may,
Supervisor Johnson?
if we have money to add these people in or in those departments, I really think they should be housed and under the authority of our finance. I understand what Supervisor Bishop's saying, but at least that would, at least given my mind, and I imagine the public, that we do have oversight, not that we're not, checking numbers as they go through, but it's easier if you ask finance, you just received this or you worked with Public Works to bring us this proposal. You've looked at everything and they say yes. It gives me a little more comfort that it's under finance than it would be under another department telling me that. That was all.
Thank you.
Chairman Watson, I couldn't agree with Supervisor Johnson enough. I totally understand what he's saying, but what I want to ask him is, because he asked for a continuance, so what would you hope to hear if we continue that? What kind of information do you want brought back?
Well, maybe better than a continuance would be just no action on this, and then we could ask staff at a different board meeting, I don't know, under this, so the county attorney could let us know, to come back with a proposal as how to house all these people, or if we should be expanding our, the role with these other departments that have these account people in them. Should they be assigned to our finance department, where we, instead of having people scattered throughout? I'm sure it makes the finance's job more difficult because they still have to review what these people are submitting forward to us. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe to look at it as a countywide overview, maybe for the budget.
Yeah.
Mr. Hendricks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the things that I'd like to ask the board to consider is that finance doesn't put the budget together for the different departments. That's not their role. Their role is to put the budget that's provided to them by the different departments together for board consideration. And their role is a lot of other things like paying the bills, payroll, and so forth and so on. So it's important to understand how we currently do business. And we hold the departments responsible for their own budgets and what's necessary to put those together, whether it be Public Works or the Health Department or whatever. And if I have a director that comes to me and tells me that one of his most important considerations to adequately do his job is to have somebody like this individual to restructure his department, to rearrange his organization so that he can have this type of an individual to provide budgetary services and to put things together and programs together for him, then I have to listen to that director. Now, if you wanted to go that other direction, I would recommend and have all the finances done by the finance department and not the departments. I think that would be quite disjointed and unproductive, but I would certainly want to hear from my finance director on any recommendations on on changes on how we currently do business. And if you wish to do that, we could get her up here.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks.
Mr. Chairman, I don't want to turn this into a long meeting with the finance director. If it's something that can be brought back under the same thing or under a different item, I understand what the county manager is saying, and all departments, and even our own with the small budgets we have, we put our budgets together and so do all the rest of them. But I think when we're starting to make people with this assignment of name into those departments, I think that's when we need to start looking at the finances role in it.
Thank you.
Joe, as I make a motion that we, well, I'm not sure if we should take no motion or we should just bring it back to be heard again. So I'm going to say that we table this item for 60 days, at which time it will be back on the agenda and to be discussed further and in more depth.
Just continue it, 60 days.
Just to
Madam
continue
Supervisor.
it. To continue it. Right.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for continuing.
One of the things, Mr. Chairman, I think we need to.
Chairman Watson, if I may.
Please.
Just, if we continue it, we'll be continuing this specific item with this specific language, which is to discuss the salary placement of the candidate for the budget analyst position. To go beyond that, to talk about, in general, the finances of whether that should be done in-house or should go to the other department, and a grand discussion about that, you'll have to do a separate agenda item for that. So when it comes back in 60 days or 30 days or whenever you bring
Right.
it back,
We'll
we will only be discussing this. But then if you want to go beyond what Supervisor Johnson and Supervisor Angus has been discussing about the broader range of whether to put it in which house, I would recommend do a separate agenda
Okay.
item for that.
All right, when that time comes.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, all we are is, and I appreciate our attorney clarifying that, what this item is if there's a recommended salary that's over step 5, which is my limit on authorizing approving the salary, then it has to come in front of the board, and that's solely what the board is voting on today, is not whether we should have the position or hire somebody into that actual position. It's whether that we are allowed to hire this individual in at a step 8.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. I do have a couple comments to make. It would be my preference today to authorize the salary placement for this candidate, knowing the complexity of the Developmental Services Department and all its different steps. I think this is one of those situations in which we can take a special action to cure this problem. I agree on both ends that there are from time to time a broad brush, but I think this is a candidate and a placement that is a rifle shot and not a shotgun. Just so that you know, that's my opinion. With that, we have a motion and a second.
I think Mr. Walsh was one of them.
Mr. Walsh.
Chairman Watson, members of the board, excuse me.
Is my thoughts of a rifle shot close to identifying the situation?
I believe so, yes, and I appreciate that. If I may offer just a couple of comments, just to maybe hope clarify a few things with this. As was pointed out, this position, it was actually, just a point of clarification, it was actually approved during the previous budget season. So this was something that was brought before the board during the budget. At this point, basically, as County Manager Hendricks pointed out, due to the salary and the step placement, that is why it's being brought forward before the board. The idea of a 60-day, if I can just kind of share my concern with the 60-day time frame, we're getting into the budget season right now, and we're from a department level, we're working with our individual divisions and setting up their budgets and working to compile our division budget to present to the county manager likely in March. I'm assuming end of February, beginning of March. So the 60 days would really, I guess, is something that we can do if that's the board's decision, but having this position during that time frame would really be beneficial to our department. I'd be happy to, excuse me, happy to answer any questions that you all might have.
I have a question. You said this was approved in the last budget, this position?
It was a new initiative that was included with the last budget, that's correct.
Do you have someone in this position now?
No, it was a new position created with the last budget, and at this point, we're looking to fill it.
And the problem is the step?
The reason for bringing it to the board today is anything above a step 4 placement comes before the board for approval. Otherwise, if we'd have had it at a step 4, we'd be moving forward.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, this position hasn't been filled, and so for all these years, we've been able to get a budget put together without it?
That is correct.
Thank you.
It was just approved this past budget year, correct?
Correct.
Okay. We have a motion and a second for 60 days.
60 days.
Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? Aye.
Aye.
I didn't hear your response, Supervisor Bishop.
I'm opposed.
Opposed? Okay. I believe your motion has failed.
Chairman Watson, I'll make a motion to approve as written.
We have a motion for approval as written. I'll second the motion. Any further discussion? May want to do a roll call.
Supervisor Angus?
No.
Supervisor Johnson?
No.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
Thank you very much. And that concludes our consent agenda. I would like to take a point of privilege here and move on to item number 29 as the folks from the Marnell Gaming are here. I'd hate to hold them up any longer than they already have. Our meeting's kind of gone for quite some time. So with that, we have a motion, discussion, possible action for the approval of special event permit issuance and authorize the Public Works Department to issue the said permit to Marnell Gaming, LLC, for the 2018 River Regatta upon the policy requirements for their approved regatta revenue plan, whereas Marnell Gaming, LLC, will remit $75,000 fixed fee to Mojave County Parks for Marnell Gaming. The whole park rental of Davis Camp from August 8th to the 13th, 2018, for the 3-day period for setup event and the 2-day cleanup periods, and further approve the Davis Camp Park non-access to season pass holders on August 10th through 11th, 2018, and no sale of RV slip reservations by the park for that permit period. We have the representatives from Marnell Gaming present. Any questions? No questions. Well, I'll make a motion for the approval of item number 29.
Second.
Pretty simple. Thank you very much. Marnell Gaming, Mr. Marnell. Any further discussion?
I watched a presentation that they brought, and I was very impressed with the fact that they want to leave less of an imprint on the Colorado River, which is something that I'm really involved with right now. And doing that and continuing to keep the river clean is something that's really important. Thanks for doing that.
You've done a remarkable job, and I really appreciate your cleaning. We have Sheriff Schuster would like to.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
believe,
Chairman and the
say
Board
a
of
few
Supervisors. I
items.
appreciate that.
Yep. Sheriff Schuster.
Chairman Watson, members of the board, just seeking some clarification. This event was held many years within the jurisdiction of Bullhead City. This now brings it at least a starting point into the county. I understand this funding goes to county parks. My only issue would be the law enforcement needs surrounding the event, and I was hoping the promoters would be able to speak on that.
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman of Board of Supervisors, I'm going to have our General Manager, Ryan Walker, speak to that because he's intimately involved day-to-day with Bullhead City on that.
Certainly.
Good morning, members of the board. Thank you, Sheriff. The operation of this event will be somewhat traditional, as it has been in years past, where it will be operated under a unified command headed by Chief Brian Williamson from the Bullhead City Police Department. It's his intent to reach out to other law enforcement agencies like MCSO as well as Highway Patrol to coordinate the needs in terms of coverage in different areas, as well as set up where the funding for the staffing and the process comes from. Similar operation as it was in 2016, and he will be heading up that piece. We will be providing the payment for the funding.
Question?
Yes, I have a question. We met, like you did, I'm sure, with all the supervisors, and we talked about that, especially with Davis Camp, that you'll have to be working with the sheriff, exclusively on that because he doesn't work for Bullhead City PD or anybody else. So maybe that's just something we overlooked, or I didn't stress it strongly enough, but we need to engage our sheriff in this.
More than willing to, absolutely agree. What we would do is I would propose meeting with you as well as Chief Williamson so that we can have those discussions. I didn't mean to leave anybody out, just trying to not reinvent the wheel, continue on as we did in years past, which I believe was a successful relationship in terms of performing the event.
I believe that's so. Sheriff Schuster, I don't believe that you've been sheriff during a regatta period. And I know Mr. Catalfamo, he used to work for Bullhead City, and now he's working on this event. And again, not reinventing the wheel. I think that the law enforcement between Bullhead City and the county worked very well together. Never actually heard any issues during the years I was involved here. So.
Supervisor Angus, I can appreciate that. Actually, you have firsthand knowledge, having worked the event for the sheriff's office at a lower level. It's not the event I'm concerned with. It's about public safety, and I want to ensure that there is proper law enforcement staffing. And I'm finding about this issue today, I'm taken aback a little bit. I guess I felt I should have been more informed on this rather than having to jump up before a vote is taken. So nothing against the event itself, just want to make sure that proper measures are taken to ensure, because we're dealing with the county park. So.
Mr. Walker, you will meet with the sheriff and make sure his concerns are allayed.
Absolutely, will be first priority.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Marnell?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to reiterate, appreciate the speed at which you're having this discussion, but like I had reiterated in the Bullhead City meeting, this is not what we do. We hold big events, law enforcement, we yield. So whatever criteria, demands, or requirements that your county has for the use of the camp, we yield to you, and we will follow the lead of our local authorities on that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Hendricks.
Mr. Chairman, may I just get a clarification from our Public Works Director? And to clear up my understanding is that the agreement before you is solely for the use of the park and for payment and contribution for that use, and it has it's not a pass-through to compensate any required law enforcement that may be deemed necessary by the sheriff or by Bullhead City PD. Is that correct?
That is correct, County Manager Hendricks.
Okay, thank you.
I do have two people signed up to speak. Joma, if you'll allow those folks to speak. Timothy Williams. Please state your name and address for the record.
Timothy Williams, Chairman of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe. My address is 6418 Marigold Court, Mojave Valley, Arizona. I'm a resident of Mojave County, and it looks like this is similar to what has taken place over in the city of Bullhead. So I just will make my comments brief. One thing that a lot of people aren't taking into consideration is the Coast Guard permit. That's one criteria that the city of Bullhead has. And so approval today, there still may be another approval that's going to be needed for the Coast Guard. And it's something that we strongly oppose. We're standing before you strongly opposing the regatta. We're the ones that are directly affected, extremely disappointed in our the vote, I think, of our county supervisor also. We are the ones directly affected there in Fort Mojave and Mojave Valley. Ask any of the residents if they're the ones that are, if they go down to the river on that day. And I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot that we hold true when it comes to spiritually, physically, and mentally as members of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe, but I know those are intangibles that some don't understand. So I'll just leave those with my comments, but I do appreciate your time and your efforts. And I would ask one thing, if there could be a potential continuance or to even table this item so you can hear more of the constituents. There's more that we understand, like the gentleman spoke about over at Safeway. I understand those things. I don't know if the companies that come in here, if they understand those things like we do here in Mojave County. So again, not only being a resident, but several of our members of the Fort Mojave Indian Tribe live within our county, and we are the ones that are directly affected by this downriver. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Roy Ann Ortiz.
Roy Ann Ortiz, 1550 Monte Vista Drive, Bullhead City. I am in favor of you approving this application, and the reason why is because I think that this event belongs in the hand of private industry as opposed to government. They just seem to do a better job, and also because of other meetings that Marnell has put on, they have said that at their expense or at the expense of the users, they're going to collect fees in order to clean the river when the event is over. And it's not just that that river gets polluted during this 1 or 2 day event. It gets polluted all year long, and they're going to be there cleaning up the pollution. And I'm in favor of taking care of the river in that aspect. Also, I noticed in their application, they're not going to be selling alcohol. Thank you very much. We don't need more alcohol being sold. And also, the county could probably use the funds for the park, because after all, the park does take money to maintain over the years. And I think that's about it. I realize how the tribes feel that they are affected downstream, and I certainly think about that. And as far as the Coast Guard, I have no opinion on whether the Coast Guard's going to improve this or not. I just think it's a nice event for people to come and experience our area, because right now people are coming over here from the state of California to to ruin our state. If I could keep them out, I would. But let them come as visitors and then go home. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Any further discussion? I believe we have a motion and a second.
Is he going to?
Mr. Murnau.
I just wanted to know if you want me to address anything else, and I'm here for you.
I would just say one thing. When you came in, you visited all of us, and during the Bullhead City discussion, I just want everyone to know that Mr. Marnell has promised $100,000 to clean the river before, which is something we've never had before, and then take a part, now correct me if I'm wrong, a piece, like an environmental impact fee from each registration that will go back into a fund for ongoing cleanup of the river in our part. And I know you've already started. I read an article in the Mojave Valley Daily News about it. And so I wanted to thank you for that. That is, again, something we've never had. And one of the reasons that I am with trepidation going along with this, I like Ms. Ortiz said, I'm happy it's in private. It's being run privately and not publicly. It was always a big issue. And we'll come back next year and see how you do.
Well, thank you. I just want to say that we appreciate the opportunity. And like I said at the Bullhead City meeting, if we don't do our job, then we won't have the event again. To cancel this event after almost 10 years of successful creation, because it did get too big and it did have some issues at the end. I've used the analogy, it's like canceling the Super Bowl because you can't clean up the tailgate party. It doesn't make any sense. It's 2018. We can create a win-win situation here. We can have a good, clean, safe event. We can clean the river properly, and we can do something that's ongoing for the river. We've already cleaned out 700 pounds of trash from this river. Our next cleanup date is February 16th. We're involving the community. We're involving the Mojave High School track team, the River Valley High School football team, Mojave High School Key Club, Rotary Interact Club, the Laughlin High School with the sport to be determined by them. So I committed when I was there that we do what we say we're going to do. If we don't, you have my throat to choke. And if we don't do our job, then we shouldn't be allowed to come back. But I firmly believe in this day and age that we can clean this river on a year-round basis, which will be the biggest win of all. And I appreciate and respect and have a very cordial relationship with Chairman Williams, but I very strongly disagree. The downriver impact is just not there. There's no proof to it. We've documented this river like I showed you all. It is now completely videoed. There is going to be no more one photo that changes this event. If we do our job, it'll be documented that we did it, and if we don't do our job, it'll be documented that we didn't. And again, my throat's here to choke. And if you look at the statistics of the Topak cleanup downriver, there is hardly any additional trash in 17 over 2016. And 16 was the largest river regatta that's been had, and it should have never gotten that big. And we've already acknowledged that and reduced the event by almost 30%. And if you look at the stats that came out of there, the trash in 17 doubled from 15. So my point of contention is that, yes, 20,000 people in a river are certainly going to cause some trash and some cleanup, but I believe we're prepared to do it. We have 155 people in our plan. We have 80 that are going to be on the river, 40 in boats, 20 people with snorkeling, and 20 people scuba diving. And if the event is not properly cleaned up, we're going to stay there until it is. It may not, and the other thing I think we've dramatically changed is we're not going to wait for the whole thing to get over and then try to go figure it out. The cleanup will start the minute the first person steps foot into the river, and it won't stop until it's done properly. You have my commitment on that, and again, if I don't do my job, then I'm out. I can't put it any more simple than that. And I would hope over time that we'll earn the trust of the people who are not on our side, and I would also hope over time that they would embrace what we're doing and become a part of the community and join in what we're doing, because there are a lot of good things going on in this community for the benefit of this river and everybody up and down river from where this event starts. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Mr. Marnell.
Mr. Marnell, I want to thank you for allowing the young people in our area to participate and have ownership in the community. I think this is the first step of showing a generation that it is their duty also to give back to the community and allowing a whole different group of people to participate. I really appreciate that, and thank you for allowing a new group of young people to be and own part of the community.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Why don't we have a roll call?
Supervisor Angus?
Yes, and good luck.
Thank you.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes, and thank you for a clean river.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Okay. Now we revert back to item number 27, discussion possible action for the acknowledgement receipt of Public Works petition to Mojave County Board of Supervisors requesting the South Escalua Road from Aberginu Drive to Redwall Drive, a length of approximately 1/2 mile to be accepted into Mojave County road system for regular maintenance in the Golden Valley area. Supervisor
Chairman Watson,
Bishop.
Motion to approve. Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. We have a motion
Second.
and second. Those in further discussion? Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 And those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item number 28, discussion, possible action for the receipt and refer to Public Works, a petition for requesting that Chuar Drive from Ganado Drive to Guthrie Road, a length of approximately 1 mile, and Granville Road and Chuar Road to Bolsa Drive, a length of approximately 1/2 mile, be accepted into the Mojave County road system for regular maintenance.
Chairman Watson, motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and second. Discussion? There being none, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. On to item number 30. Discussion, possible action, review the benefits or costs associated with 2 board meetings per month versus 1 meeting per month. This item is brought to us by Supervisor Angus. Supervisor Angus.
Chairman Watson. Okay, well, my assistant Karen showed me an article that she got in her email from Supervisor Johnson's newsletter that he sends out. He reports on his district. And I was surprised to learn that we could save $500,000 a year by going to 1 meeting instead of 2. And as I read the rest of the article, I have to say, honestly, it just really didn't make too much sense to me, but because it is Supervisor Johnson is saying that it's such a large amount of money, I felt it was very important to talk about it, because if I thought there was some way to save that kind of money, I would be here every meeting trying to convince you to do it. So I made some phone calls to the county and talked to some people, and of course there was a lot of different opinions, but I don't believe any of them said that it would be anything close to that. In his article, Supervisor, well, first I'll, because I keep referring to him, I'll let Supervisor Johnson defend it, and if he thinks that it is something he wants to convince us, I would more than be happy to listen to what his numbers, and if he can defend those numbers, I'll be happy to consider going to 1 meeting a month.
Supervisor Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you, Supervisor, for using my newsletter as backup, which people can sign up for at busterjohnson.com. But I laid out my reasoning in the newsletter in 12 parts. If there's some part of that we can go over that you don't agree with, I'm more than happy to do it.
Okay, well, you referred back to the previous years, because we only had 1 meeting up to 2012, when you were chairman.
That's
Okay.
when we started in 2012.
How many supervisors were there in 2012?
3.
3. And who was chairman? You were chairman for what, like 6 years or something? 4, 6 years?
Off and
Oh.
on.
And I used to sit right there for a year and a half before I was elected to get to understand how the county works. I sat in the front row every meeting. And, there wasn't a lot of public participation. First of all, there was no call to public. We had no call to public, and one of the reasons I believe I am sitting here today is because of that. People were concerned that their voices weren't being heard, and because there was a 3-member board, if there was a motion for discussion, there had to be a second. So I want to ask Chairman Watson, because you were here during that period, and as I remember, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you would quite often have something you wanted to talk about or discuss, and you didn't get a second for discussion, or even to talk about something that a supervisor wanted to put on the agenda just to discuss.
Happened quite often, yes.
It happened quite often. That's how I remember it, too. So to say in your article that, it was more, maybe it did go quicker, and for the county itself and for the staff, maybe it was a little bit, it worked better. However, I think that to have a fully well-run government, the people's voices must be heard. And I don't mind sitting here and doing that, but if we went to one meeting, and we've had meetings that have gone 8, 10 hours, and Supervisor Johnson, in his article, contends that that wouldn't be the case. And I have to take issue with that, because you never know what's going to come on. And I don't understand the idea that if we go to one meeting, it would be a less cost, because it's still the same amount of work. So if you're talking about people's salaries, you're still being paid. It's not like you're being paid extra. So if you're talking about a $500,000 amount, that comes out to about, $21,000 per meeting. Mr. Hendricks, do you believe that each meeting, the cost of a meeting is about $21,000?
Not to put you on the...
Mr. Chairman, my wife warned me that would probably be asked of me today, and I said, well, let me think of what I should answer. And I said that, did you all know that if you went with Geico, you could save 15% on your car insurance? So
Probably an
anyway,
appropriate response.
thank you for the liberty of
okay.
allowing
So
me to do
thank you
that.
for
But
your
I haven't done the
judicial-
analysis. I think you're absolutely correct that the salaries of the individuals is included, or we would be seeing overtime for these meetings. However, with that said, I don't think it's a salary issue. I think it's a productivity issue. If you're going to put a dollar amount on the one meeting versus 2 meetings, it would be productivity. And I think one of the most important people that spend an inordinate amount of resources and does an excellent job putting this stuff together is the clerk of the board, and I don't want to put her on the spot either, but she's the one that does all the heavy lifting for this. As you see, my staff is available for the board, would be available to the board if it was 20 items twice a month or 40 items once a month. So, my statement when I was asked that question by the media was, it's not up to staff to decide. Staff certainly will do whatever is necessary to accommodate the board's wishes, and that's our job.
Okay.
And so whatever the board decides on this particular issue, I'm going to be tickled to death, and we'll just accommodate whatever you decide. So
Okay,
thank
well, you
you.
really tap danced around that one pretty well. Thank you.
I believe that's what we call a teddy bear dance.
And
I do have one comment to make, if I could. One of the things that we're kind of overlooking is the service to our constituents. And if we move to one meeting a month, that in many instances would take, many times, 2 to 3 months for an action to be taken. So in order for us to take and make sure that we're taking care of our constituents, I think we need to stay at 2 meetings a month. And it only makes sense to do the very best we can to service the people that pay the taxes that allow us to sit in these seats.
I agree with that. And, for putting money on it, I asked my assistant to remind me how much we charge Kingman to have their city council meetings here, and we did put a number to that. And that number to rent this facility and one tech was $300 a month. So that leaves about over $20,000 left for that. So again, I appreciate Supervisor Johnson and looking for ways to save money, and I hope that spirit continues as we go into our budget talks, as we look at ways to cut the way that we do business, but not the way our citizens can be involved in their government.
Mr. Chairman, a lot of statements have been made. We went back, and I thought somebody would have pulled this information, but we did it. We spent 56 hours and 54 minutes in meetings in 2017. We spent 26 hours and 15 minutes in 2012. In 2012, we averaged 63 items, 56 being consent. The meetings averaged about a little less than 2 hours. And in 2017, we had an average of 44 items with 29 being consent, and the meeting averaged almost 2.5 hours. The problem we run into when you're running two meetings, and we talk about, the public participation and call to the public, we pull up the numbers, and 2017, 37 people spoke one time. They got to remember, I think that was rough at that time, or one of the big items. In 2016, 23 people spoke once, 35 in 2015. That was animal control was a big item that year. So there's no more public participation in call to the public. You look at our stats on the internet, which I'm really glad we do. We're getting maybe 100 people around there averaging watching the internet meeting. That could be at any time, today live or the next year, and it could be any one of us looking at it 3 or 4 times. It doesn't distinguish how much time you use. The problem you have when you run two meetings, and I think, to clarify why I think the one meeting is shorter, is something that County Manager Hendricks brought up. We put more trust into our employees when we're doing the one meeting a month because they knew they had to have the agenda items in on time. A lot of stuff got handled before the next meeting that they could do instead of just slapping it on the next agenda to let the board make a decision. I think we used their expertise a lot more at that time. When you talk about, my opinion, the waste of county resources, when you're doing 2 meetings a month, like today, I don't know how many people realize how many items we have on the agenda. We have over 400 items, 400 pages, on the agenda. I did a little research. Now, the average is about 800 to 1,000 pages of backup. But just in the last, 4, which were very short ones because of the holidays, we averaged 528 pages of backup for those meetings. Now, when we have to read these, all of our department heads have to read them, and then people in their departments have to read them. If you have one meeting a month, it's kind of a job that you get on and you get it done, and it takes you quite a while to do that. But when you have 2 meetings, it's a stop-and-go process. And when you have department heads like Mr. Letowski, who I don't know if he's still here or not, yeah, he's still here, he drives from another place to come over here, and he sits and he listens to me pontificate on how many minutes it takes to have a meeting, which is pretty exciting for him, when he could be over there designing a bridge or doing something. I think that it's the best use of our tax dollars for one meeting a month. And I know what you're saying about, with 3 supervisors and the way the meetings were run. We have 5 now, so things can still be the same. But I think it saves us a lot of money. It puts our employees back to doing what they're paid to be doing. To me, and the numbers show it from before, that it saved time. That's all, unless you have a question on. I have tons of information I pulled up if you want it.
I agree that it would maybe be a little bit more helpful for staff. But again, I think we're forgetting our purpose here, and that is we are the taxpayer at the table. and that is our job, to speak about these issues as we have. I mean, this morning is a great example. I think if there was one meeting and there was double the amount of items, we might just kind of skip over something for the sake of time, that maybe we would have heard something that would have affected a vote. And this might sound corny, but I'm going to say it anyway. I don't care if it's one person or 40 people. Every citizen has a right to address their elected officials in an open forum, in a public meeting on the record. And that is the call to public that we didn't have before 2012. And like I said, I don't care if it's 1 or 35. We're going to keep having it, and it should be available, and it should be convenient for people to come and doing one meeting. Right now, people complain that we have it in the morning and that they can't come, they're at work. A lot of people can't. When we put this on, when there was the article in the paper, I started getting calls, well, again, why don't you revisit having it in different cities in the quarterly? And I know that you guys had tried that in the past, and I do think that's cost prohibitive, and for a lot of reasons. But I just wanted to talk about this because, again, it's a lot of money that's being said that could be saved. I want to save money, but not at the expense of citizen participation.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, and I think where we disagree is, to me, this is a business meeting. This is not a town hall. We have called the public, people are going to address it, and I think the numbers show that basically no one is addressing those issues. I think the taxpayers elect us to handle the business, and they will let us know if something's out of whack, and they will get a hold of us, but they really don't want to hear from us. I mean, they want you just doing your job and not creating waves. The people from my district obviously are not participating in this call to the public, but they still get a hold of me through phone calls, texts, emails, run into you at the grocery store. But I think that these are business meetings and should be treated as such, and I don't think we've had. I think the numbers show that we had actually shorter meetings in the past than we've had now with 2 meetings a month. That's all. Thank you.
It could be that the chairman has a red neck, speaks a little bit slow. Maybe that's part of the problem.
That could be.
Did you wish to make a motion on this, or
There's no action.
just for discussion?
It was just for discussion.
Okay, thank you. We did have one person signed up to speak to it, Roy Ann Ortiz.
Roy Ann Ortiz, 1550 Monte Vista, Bullhead City. It was just this item on the agenda that caused me to show up today. I just couldn't believe we could save $500,000 by going from 2 meetings into one. But I figured out, well, how can we save the money? I mean, really save the money. Well, let's say on average, half the morning is gone just for this meeting. That's 4 hours, 1 day a month that we would save. All right, that means Jenny only has 1 meeting to care for, so she's part-time now. She just lost her full-time job. All of you guys, you get to lose 4 hours worth of pay, and everyone here from they all get to give up 4 hours of pay. To me, that's the only way you save money, is when you say you're not going to get paid because we didn't have that meeting. There's no other way to save money other than that, as far as attributing it to coming to the meeting. Now, nobody's salary got reduced either. You say we didn't have as many people coming. Well, from the discussions that I've been hearing from you guys, even if they came to the meeting, they couldn't talk back in 2011. So why show up? And generally, when it comes to a call to the public, if you aren't allowed to come up and talk, or if you can only talk once, of course, there's only going to be, I can only come up 1 time on a call to the public. And then I assumed at the time back then, when you only had 1 meeting, that no one was allowed to speak to the topics, because after all, It's things you're voting on. It's your business that is being discussed. It's our money that's paying for this business, and we have a right to talk about it. So I don't want to hear any more talk about, no, we're only going to go to one meeting. We're going to stay at 2 meetings so that the public has a chance to come and talk to you about how you're spending our money. Thank you.
To answer Ms. Ortiz, you do not have the right to speak to every item. We had a open meeting law class here, and if you were here, you probably heard the attorney tell you that you do not have the right to speak to all items, only public hearings.
What I'm saying is that you're spending our money, you've allowed us to come and talk, and that's a good thing. I know you don't want people to be able to come and talk, that's fine, that's your opinion. Thank God we have 4 other people that do.
Thank you, Ms. Ortiz. On to item number 31, and that's for the discussion, possible action, approve and complete the sale of real property identified as parcel number 303, 08, 151, and 153, address being 301 and 315 Oak Street, Kingman, Arizona, commonly known as the Arnold Plaza, to the Jerry Ambrose Veterans Council for the sum of $58,500 in accordance with the ARS 11-251, and authorize the chairman to execute the sales purchase agreement and warranty deed. Mr. Lutowski, did you want to add anything to this morning? You don't need to come to the podium if you don't have anything to add. It'd be my pleasure to make a motion for the approval of item number 31.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Supervisor Johnson? We have one person signed up to speak to it, and that's Mr. Pat Farrell.
Good morning, Chairman Watson and Board of Supervisors and County Manager Michael Hendricks. I rise today in support of this agenda item for the following reasons. Here's your $500,000 we just saved you for the building, okay? And we're going to pay you $58,500 on top of that. It's kind of weird how Arnold Plaza, this project, mirrors our Operation 6 project. It's taken unused, deteriorated property and determined the problems, determined suitability for a return to functional status, fix the problems, and enjoy the rewards of returning an eyesore to a beacon of hope for our military veterans and their families. Some of the things that we do, we're going to do that with people and not property. Mojave County leads the state in veteran suicides, according to a recent ASU report. Mojave County has a 13% per capita ratio of veterans, yet over 30% of our homeless are veterans, according to the 2015 Point in Time survey. Our mission is to provide the resources needed by our vets seeking a hand up for a return to a gainful civilian life and contribute to the community in place of needing assistance from government agencies. We want to help them reunite with their families as a potential support system. Our resources are available to all veterans. According to the Veterans Administration, exposure to resources has reduced those considering suicide by 60%. The future seems to hold potential for Mojave County to be a draw for the companies seeking to open new facilities, and when looking for a location, the wise companies will review the commitment of those resources available to those in need, a commitment to projects such as our Operation 6R+. This is a win-win project with a very small percentage of the population being in the NIMBY train of thought. Veterans relocate to Mojave County for many reasons, and there are over 26,000 living here now. Most are successful, and let's work to making the success rate even better. These people wrote a blank check to you and the people of the United States up to and including the cost of our lives to defend our liberties and freedoms which we so richly enjoy. With our every success, there will be more funds available for you to shift to the civilian population that needs resources, homeless. I suggest that the Board of Governors fully can support our project in the future, whether it be through funds or statements or letters of support. With this, I want to let you know that a rising tide raises all ships, okay, which it not only raises the bottom, but raises the tops. And I'd like to thank John Meading and Steve Latosky and their department for the help they provided us in this, and Mike Hendricks. Appreciate an affirmative vote on this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pettit. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Chairman, if I could just add one, just so that we're in line with the statute, 11251, the specific uses for this building will be for a resource center for the veterans, is that correct? Is that?
In addition to transitional housing, okay, we'll be working in conjunction with the VA and other agencies, okay?
I need to come up to the mic.
Yeah, come up to the mic, thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
The object here is to get them healthy first, okay? This is people that want a hand up. There's people that want to be homeless or hold the sign, like the other gentleman said, for the rest of their lives. We want to help those that want a hand up. We will get them healthy. We will determine their abilities to the future, whether it be they're unable to work or able to work, and we will get them the training that they need and work with them to get the jobs that they need to become productive citizens in this county. Okay, we have a lot of companies probably coming here looking for the talented workforce that the veteran is. Most of the veterans have been exposed to the latest technology during their time in the service and have some skills that are serious. Okay, so it's an entire project.
Yeah, I just want to make sure on the record what the specific use is for the building will be transitional housing and a resource center for veterans.
Yes.
Correct, thank you.
Does that satisfy your requirements?
Yes, and it will be will also require a unanimous vote of the board.
Okay, then at that point, we should probably have a roll call.
Yes.
Supervisor Angus?
Yes.
Supervisor Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Bishop?
Yes.
Supervisor Wakamoto?
Yes.
And Chairman Watson?
Yes. We have a motion to adjourn. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today, and Mr. Farrell, have a wonderful day.